What's going on, everybody? Today, I want to talk about how I was able to save enough money to buy real estate. So, for those of you who don't know, I've been a pharmacist for 10 years, a pharmacy director for the past 5 years. And if for those of you who don't know, I actually came out with $250,000 in student debt. So let me kind of break down how I was able to pay off $250,000 of student debt and subsequently save up for a down payment. So let's begin. So this is my timeline here. Let me grab my pen. So I graduated pharmacy school in 2013 and I had 250K of student debt. And pharmacists typically make a six-figure salary, so kind of a good starting pay was about 120K salary, which is roughly around maybe $6,000 take home. 6K take home. So for me, due to my job, I had to rent for my first job, and my rent was roughly, so I was just renting a room. It was a cheaper city. I think I paid $500 a month. So kind of something that was very fortunate for me was I graduated pharmacy school at a very young age and I still had the college mentality. So even though I was making a good salary over here and taking home $6,000, I was still very humble enough to just share a room because my mentality was I'm only in my apartment to really sleep, eat, and rest for the next day. I was in a kind of more of a remote rural area that was mostly farmland. So there wasn't really much to do. I think my rent was $500 a month. For food, I just kind of cooked very basic foods, nothing too fancy. So, or if I ate out, you can probably say my food budget was probably $500 a month as well. And then, for gas, I had a gym membership. I think it was another like $500. So if you add that all up, roughly my living expense was around 1,500 a month. So I was essentially, if you kind of arbitrage this, saving around $4,500 a month. So what a lot of people struggle with is it's not about how much you make. I mean, don't get me wrong, $6,000 take home was great. It's about how much you spend. This is fully within your control, right? So a lot of my classmates, the moment they got their first job, they bought new cars, they rented in a fancy, luxurious downtown area. But I still kept very humble and had the college mentality so I can save, $4,500 a month. And what do? I save that $4,500 a month to basically tackle my student debt. So what is $4,500 a month? Let's get my calculator here. So 4,500 times 12. So essentially, that was almost like um, I saved roughly around 55K a year. So that's pretty significant, right? It takes a lot of discipline to basically keep your expenses very low. Um, take home 4,500 a month, which is 55K a year. So what I did was I wanted to build an emergency fund because you always want to have an emergency fund. So I basically saved up about, let's just call it 10K. It's the emergency fund. So people typically recommend maybe about 6 to 12 months of your living expense. Um, for me, I'm just a single guy, so I felt like 10K was a solid number. but I had a 10K emergency fund, and then anything beyond that, I literally just threw at my student loan. So once I had my 10K emergency fund, the remaining 45K went straight to paying my student debt. Right? So once I had that 10K emergency fund, my student debt, all that went to my student debt, because that's all I knew back then. All I knew was to get out of debt. That's what my parents taught me, and that's what I was always advised. So that's exactly what I did. So you repeat the process. So every year I did the same thing. 2014, I was working at the same job. Honestly, I think I got like a 1% raise, or not much of a raise. So I repeat the same process, right? So I probably put about 55K, and then I used that towards my student debt. And then come 2015, I was able to get a higher paying job. So same thing, right? Like you want to focus on increasing your salary. So I think I was probably taking home maybe 8,000 a month take home, and my expenses are the same. So actually, in 2015, I found a job near where my parents lived, so I had no rent, right? So basically, my only expense was my food, which was 500, and let's just say I spent another 500 for activities, going out, and I don't know. Let's just say I have another 500 here for fun money. So once again, $1,500, but my take home was 8,000. So my savings rate was 6,500 a month, which pans out to be, what's that per year? $78,000 a year. And same thing, I just took this money and I dumped it at my student debt. So you can kind of fast forward a little bit more. 2016, my income stayed roughly the same, but I was able to save that same amount, 78K. And then 2017, same thing. My income kind of stayed stagnant. It's the blessing and the curse of pharmacy is we make the same money. So it's another 78K I was able to save. And I think at this point, I paid off 250K student debt. So to kind of summarize, from 2017 or 2013 all the way to 2017, I basically lived like a poor college student where my monthly expense was roughly around $1,500 a month. And basically, I kept that the same throughout, and I was able to increase my income by job hopping, and I was able to save the difference and basically just chunk at paying on my student debt. I lived very humbly. I didn't go out, go crazy, buy nice cars, buy nice things, buy a Rolex. A lot of my classmates did a lot of that. I just stayed disciplined, put my head down, and in 4 years, I paid off $250,000 student debt. So I just kind of want to summarize what I did here. Was number one, basically, expenses low. Number two is don't lifestyle inflate. No lifestyle inflation. And number three is, increase income through job hopping. So that's all I did. And then I had a emergency fund of 10K. So that's all I did for basically 4 years. And that is how I paid off $250,000 student debt. I mean, it sounds very impressive, but the hard part is, this is number five, is discipline. So from there, I think halfway to 2017, I think I was able to save, uh, I want to say close to like $60,000. And, fortunately for me, I was able to borrow, I think another, I want to say 100K from my parents. I'm very fortunate to be able to borrow that money. And that helped me do a 20% down payment on my $800,000 single family home. So for some reason, I was very adamant, or my parents were very adamant on getting me down to 20%. And that's all I knew. But in retrospect, I could have gotten away with 10% down, which would have been only 80K. So I just needed to basically, borrow, 20K from my parents. If I was smarter and learned about leverage a bit better, I would have done that. But, all I knew was whatever my parents taught me, and that was you need 20% down. They, they were very adamant about 20% down, so that's all I had ingrained in my mind. So, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you save it for your down payment? And this is why I want to outline this. It's not glamorous at all. I literally just worked a W 2 job. I kept my expenses very low. And over the span of, 4 to 5 years, I just saved my money and paid off my student debt. And after my student debt was paid off, what was next? I want to save it for my down payment. So this is what helped me save up for my down payment and how I was able to scale About Partners. So now that I own all this real estate, I can now leverage my real estate, which has equity, to then help me with down payments moving forward. So, a lot of real estate investors I see on YouTube, they knock on the W2 world. They're not good in school. They don't have good jobs. So they had to do real estate to make it. But for me, I'm the complete opposite. I was very good at school. I had very good grades. I have a doctorate degree, I have a master's degree, and I was very good at my job. I moved up organically in the pharmacy world to become a pharmacy director, which increased my income. And while doing all of that, I kept my expense exactly the same from when I graduated until I became a pharmacy director, and was able to save up a lot of money to pay off the student loans, to save for my first down payment. And once I got my first house, I started to house hack. And once again, what did that do? That gave me 3K a month in income. So you can see how this starts to stack up, right? I'm getting 8K from my job, from my W2, plus 3K from house hacking, which gave me 11K a month. So that's how you stack it up, right? And same thing in 2019 when I got my second single family home. Same thing. I had 8K for my W2. I was getting, let's just call it for simplicity, 4K for my first single family home. And then I house hacked my second home, and I think I was getting around, what was that, 28 plus 24, let's just call it 6K from house hacking. So now I'm getting 18K a month. So this is how you start to stack your income, is how it starts to compound time over time again. And same thing, you better believe me, in 2019, I kept my living expense exactly the same. I don't eat fancy, I don't buy new things, I don't buy fancy clothes. You just keep it very humble, and you can see how your wealth starts to compound over time. So overall, just kind of wanted to share my blueprint on how I was able to save a lot of money and lower my expense. And there's nothing wrong with focusing on your W2 job. and focus on ways to make more money. I was always very focused, like, what can I do? What type of job can I do to make more money? Because if I'm spending 40 hours a week at a job, I might as well maximize how much money I make. I always kind of had that mindset. Like, if I'm going to be here for 40 hours, I'd rather make more money versus less money in that same 40 hours. So that was always my mentality. To me, after a while, all jobs become the same. It's very repetitive, especially in pharmacy. So you might as well be making good money while you're there to maximize your dollar per hour. And from there, you can start to buy assets that help increase your income more and more. So overall, I hope this was valuable and kind of gives you some hope and inspiration on how to save money or also how to pay off your student loans. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much.